I've seen 1,000 species make first contact. It's my job, after all. Official designation, Voxnar Prime, cataloger of emergent civilizations. Unofficial designation, guy who watches primitives figure out they're not alone in the universe. Today, humans. Sol system. Third planet. Not promising. The Galactic Council doesn't waste top-tier observers on backwater species. I'm here because humans rank low on the potential scale. Their technological progression is unremarkable. Their societal structures are predictably hierarchical. Their biology is carbon standard. Nothing to see here, folks. I've positioned my observation pod in high orbit above their planet. The cloak renders me invisible to their primitive scanning systems. From here I can monitor their global communication networks, tap into their information repositories, and observe their behavioral patterns without interference. First impressions: messy, chaotic, inefficient. Their first true steps toward deep space began decades ago with crude rocket technology. Now they've established a small colony on their nearby moon and an outpost on their neighboring planet. Bare minimum achievements for a species at their development stage. My report was practically written before I arrived. Standard template. Species exhibits baseline potential. Recommend passive monitoring until significant developmental milestone achieved. Projected timeline for meaningful contact: 300 meters, 500 years. Then the incident happened. The mining vessel Trellix appeared at the edge of the system. Not unusual. Independent operators often scout unregistered systems for resources. The Trellix detected the human presence and, following protocol, initiated a standard greeting burst toward Earth. This is routine. The greeting contains basic mathematical sequences establishing intelligence, followed by simple pictographic communication protocols. Most species respond with confusion, fear, religious fervor, or some combination thereof. The standard procedure is to then withdraw and let the species process this new reality at their own pace. The humans responded within 6 hours, not with fear, not with confusion, not with religious awe. They responded with an invitation. I watched as they hastily assembled a delegation. 7 humans from different regions boarded their most advanced spacecraft and plotted an intercept course with the Trellix. The human craft was painfully primitive, barely more than a reinforced habitat module attached to chemical propulsion engines. The Trellix captain, a Moriki trader named Vanks, was clearly surprised. First contact protocols typically involve years of gradual communication escalation. Holbuddy expects the primitives to just show up. I monitored the human communication networks as their craft approached the Trellix. Their population was in turmoil, some terrified, some elated, most simply stunned by the revelation. Their governments were scrambling, their military forces were on high alert, but the delegation, they were calm, focused, almost eager. "Captain," said the human leader, a male called Thomas Marshall, after the Trellix established communication. "On behalf of humanity, we extend greetings and friendship. We request permission to dock and meet in person." Vanks, to his credit, recovered quickly from his surprise. The Trellix extended a docking umbilical, and the humans were brought aboard. I watched through the ship's security feeds. The humans stepped into the airlock, wearing sealed environmental suits. Smart. They couldn't know what pathogens might lurk on an alien vessel. The Moriki crew waited in the reception chamber, their tentacular appendages waving in nervous excitement. The inner airlock door opened. The humans stepped through, and Thomas Marshall removed his helmet. The Moriki recoiled in shock. Exposing oneself to potential contamination is an act of insanity by galactic standards. But Marshall smiled, showing teeth, a universal sign of aggression, and extended a hand toward Vanks. "We come in peace," he said, using a phrase I'd noted was common in their fictional accounts of extraterrestrial contact, "and we're really excited to meet you." Excited, not terrified, not awed, excited. I checked my translator again, certain I'd misinterpreted. But no, the human was genuinely expressing enthusiasm. The meeting lasted 3 hours. The humans asked questions, endless questions, about the Moriki, about the galaxy, about technology, and biology, and culture, and history. They answered the Moriki's questions with surprising candor, acknowledging their technological limitations without shame. When Marshall revealed that humans had been broadcasting their presence into space for over a century, Vanx's skin changed to a deep purple of alarm. "You deliberately announced your presence?" Vanx asked, without knowing what might be listening. Marshall shrugged, a gesture my database identified as indicating nonchalance. "We figured if anyone could hear us and wanted to do us harm, they probably already would have." I logged that response for further analysis. It wasn't merely confidence, it was something else entirely. After the humans returned to Earth, I continued monitoring their communications. Their response to confirmed alien contact was not proceeding according to any standard model. There was fear, yes. Religious upheaval, yes. But overwhelmingly, their markets stabilized within days. Their governments rapidly formed new coalitions. Their scientific community exploded with activity. Within weeks, they'd reverse-engineered components of the gift package Vanx had provided, a standard assortment of basic technical data and cultural information given to newly contacted species. Within months, they'd modified their propulsion systems based on the simplified diagrams Vanx had shared out of courtesy. And within a year, 3 new human vessels departed Earth orbit, heading for nearby star systems where they now knew other civilizations existed. I sent an urgent update to the Council. This was unprecedented acceleration. The Council's response was immediate. Maintain observation. Assess threat potential. Threat potential. The words hung in my mind as I watched the humans' frenetic activity. I'd cataloged hundreds of species, and none had responded to contact like this. It wasn't their technology that concerned me. Their ships were still painfully slow, their weapons primitive. It was something more fundamental, something in their psychology. I began sifting through their historical records, their literature, their entertainment, looking for the pattern I couldn't quite see, and then I found it. Humans don't feel proper fear. Oh, they experience the emotion. They recognize danger, but their response to fear is entirely aberrant. Every rational species reacts to fear with caution, with withdrawal, with careful assessment, and incremental advance. Fear is the universe's way of saying, slow down. Humans treat fear as a challenge. Throughout their history, when humans encountered something frightening, a significant percentage of them moved toward it, investigated it, tested themselves against it. Their literature is full of characters who experienced terror, but proceed anyway. Their heroes are often those who faced the greatest fears and continued forward. They call this courage, and they value it above almost all other qualities. When they don't understand something, they poke it with a stick to see what happens. When they can't go somewhere, they build machines to go there for them. When they can't survive in an environment, they reshape the environment to make it habitable. They are, in essence, pathologically undeterred. The Moriki gave them a glimpse of a vast galactic civilization, ancient and complex, and utterly beyond their comprehension, and their response was to rush headlong toward it. I'm submitting my final assessment to the Council today, along with my recommendation. The humans will not wait the customary centuries to develop technologies matching galactic standards. They will not respectfully maintain distance from more advanced civilizations. They will not proceed with appropriate caution into the cosmic community. They will come, ready or not, invited or not, equipped or not, and they will not stop coming. Their technology isn't the threat. Their biology isn't the threat. Even their propensity for conflict isn't the threat. Their fearlessness is the threat. They surge forward, generation after generation, falling and failing and dying, but always advancing. They plant their flags on inhospitable rocks. They dive into oceans that could crush them. They fling themselves into the void with inadequate protection because they cannot bear not knowing what's out there. My recommendation: immediate quarantine of the soul system, not to protect us from them, but to protect them from us and from themselves. Because the most terrifying thing about humans isn't their aggression or their ambition. It's that they've somehow survived their reckless relationship with fear. And I suspect the universe may not be ready for a species that walks toward the things that should make them run away. My recommendation was ignored. The Council deemed my assessment speculative and insufficiently supported by empirical data. They downgraded the human threat designation from potential concern to minimal. They reassigned me to continue observation, but with reduced priority. That was 6 months ago. The Vex car incident began 3 weeks later. The Vex car Imperium occupies 17 systems in the sector adjacent to Sol. They're classified as an aggressive expansion species, technologically advanced, hierarchical, territorial. Their policy toward newly discovered civilizations is simple: subjugate or eradicate. When the Vex car intercepted transmissions from the human vessels traveling outside their home system, they dispatched a scout fleet to investigate. I detected the fleet's entry into Sol's space and immediately notified the Council. The Council's response: monitor situation. Non-interference protocols remain in effect. The Vex car scout fleet consisted of 5 warships. Each one carried enough firepower to level a continent. Their arrival was deliberate, aggressive, and unmistakable. They dropped out of FTL directly above Earth, weapons systems fully charged. I watched the human response unfold across their communication networks. Their military forces scrambled. Their governments convened emergency sessions. Their populations reacted with predictable fear. But not panic. Never panic. The Vex car commander, Supreme Executor Drax Maul, transmitted the standard Imperium ultimatum to Earth's governments: submit to Vex car authority or face annihilation. To emphasize his point, he ordered the destruction of their moon base. 1 warship fired a single graviton beam. The human outpost and its 47 inhabitants were vaporized instantly. The humans had 12 hours to respond. I expected negotiations, desperate pleas, perhaps a show of defiance, followed by inevitable capitulation. That's the standard response pattern for technologically outmatched species. Instead, I witnessed the impossible. 11 hours after the ultimatum, while the Vex car fleet maintained high orbit over Earth, waiting for submission, every active human military vessel changed course simultaneously, not toward the Vex car ships, away from them. They were retreating, or so it appeared. The Vex car didn't bother intercepting these obviously inferior craft. Their scanners would have shown the human vessels posed no threat. At precisely the 12-hour mark, Thomas Marshall, the same human who had first contacted the Moriki, appeared on a global broadcast. He addressed not the Vex car, but his fellow humans. "They expect us to surrender," he said. "They expect us to choose survival over freedom. They expect us to behave rationally." He smiled, that same teeth-baring expression that had unsettled the Moriki. "Let's show them how humans respond to bullies." What followed defied all conflict resolution models in my database. 37 simultaneous nuclear detonations occurred in Earth's upper atmosphere. The electromagnetic pulses temporarily disabled most of their global communications and created a planet-wide sensor blind spot for the Vex car fleet. Under this electromagnetic cover, 500 primitive chemical rockets launched from distributed sites across the planet's surface. Most were decoys or carried minimal explosive payloads, barely enough to scratch Vex-Car hull plating. But 17 of these rockets contained something else entirely: human soldiers, suicide troops. Each rocket was on a direct collision course with a Vex-Car vessel. The Vex-Car point defense systems easily destroyed most of the incoming projectiles, but the sheer number overwhelmed their targeting algorithms. 3 of the manned rockets struck their targets. The rockets didn't carry conventional explosives. They carried breaching teams, human soldiers in sealed combat suits, armed with primitive ballistic weapons and explosives, physically cut their way into the Vex-Car warships. This tactic is considered functionally insane by all established military doctrines. Direct boarding actions against superior forces have a success probability of effectively 0. The Vex-Car had no protocols for this scenario, because no rational species would attempt it. But the humans did, and somehow, against all probability, they seized control of 2 Vex-Car vessels. What happened next demonstrated why humans are fundamentally different from any species I've catalogued. The captured Vex-Car ships immediately turned their weapons on their sister vessels. The remaining Vex-Car commanders, shocked by this development, hesitated just long enough for the human boarders to transmit the Vex-Car command codes to Earth. Within hours, the humans had neutralized the entire scout fleet. 3 ships destroyed, 2 captured, but they weren't finished. Using the navigational data from the captured vessels, the humans identified the location of the nearest Vex-Car outpost. The military vessels that had appeared to retreat earlier now changed course again, heading directly for the outpost. Using modified engines, based on the limited FTL technology they'd reverse-engineered from the Moriki data. Meanwhile, on Earth, something unprecedented was occurring. Their fractious national governments, which had been competing for dominance since before they discovered electricity, were rapidly coalescing into a unified defense authority. Resources were being pooled, production facilities repurposed. Scientists and engineers collaborated across previous boundaries. All of this in a matter of days. The Vex-Car, upon learning of their fleet's defeat, dispatched a battle group of 20 warships to crush this upstart species once and for all. I transmitted an emergency priority alert to the Council. Vex-Car human conflict escalating. Potential for significant casualties. Request immediate diplomatic intervention. The Council's response: request denied. Non-interference protocols remain in effect. Continue observation. The Vex-Car battle group arrived in Sol space 2 weeks later, expecting to find a primitive planet cowering in fear of their retribution. Instead, they found the 2 captured Vex-Car vessels waiting for them, now modified with human adaptations that my scanners couldn't fully identify. Alongside these ships were 15 new human vessels, constructed in that impossibly brief window using Vex-Car technology extracted from the captured ships. The human fleet was still grossly outmatched. The logical action would be to retreat, to negotiate, to play for time. The humans attacked immediately. I've studied conflict patterns across 800 species. There are established tactical doctrines that all evolved predators follow. Conservation of resources, minimization of casualties, optimization of advantageous positioning. Humans ignore these fundamentals entirely. They threw their ships directly at the Vex-Car formation, executing maneuvers that sacrificed their own vessels to create openings for their companions. They deployed their limited weapons in ways that prioritized maximum damage over crew survival. They transmitted battle communications in the clear, with no encryption, allowing their commanders to bypass secure protocols for the sake of speed. Most disturbing of all, their troops fought harder when victory seemed impossible. When rational species recognize defeat, they withdraw to preserve remaining forces. Humans do the opposite. They commit more desperately to the fight. The Vex-Car battle group lost 7 ships in the first engagement. They retreated to regroup. visibly shaken by the humans' incomprehensible tactics. But the greatest shock came 3 days later. Using the FTL technology extracted from the captured Vex-Kar ships, humans launched a direct assault on the Vex-Kar homeworld, not with a military fleet. They couldn't assemble enough ships that quickly. Instead, they sent 3 vessels on what they themselves called a suicide run. These ships carried no conventional weapons. They carried a message footage from the battle in Sol system, broadcasted directly to the Vex-Kar population, along with a simple declaration: "We are humanity. We do not surrender. We do not submit. And we are coming." 2 of the messenger ships were destroyed. 1 returned with a Vex-Kar diplomatic envoy. I'm submitting a revised assessment to the Council today. The humans have now acquired FTL technology, energy weapons, and advanced manufacturing techniques. They've demonstrated an ability to adapt and implement new technologies at a pace that defies all developmental models. But their technology isn't what makes them dangerous. What makes them dangerous is their response to aggression. When threatened, humans don't become cautious. They become reckless. They don't calculate odds. They defy them. They don't value self-preservation above all else. They willingly sacrifice themselves in pursuit of victory. The Vex-Kar, one of the most feared military powers in this sector, have signed a non-aggression pact with Earth, not out of respect for human military capability, which remains objectively inferior. They signed because human behavior terrifies them. I've seen the classified Vex-Kar report on the conflict. Their military analysts couldn't make sense of human tactics. Their psychological experts failed to produce a coherent model of human motivation. In the end, their recommendation to the Vex-Kar High Command contained just 5 words: "Do not provoke them again." My recommendation to the Council remains the same: quarantine. Not because humans are ready to threaten the galactic community, but because the galactic community is not ready for humans. We've made a terrible miscalculation. We evaluated humans by their technology, by their resources, by their apparent capabilities. Ruthlessness. We should have been evaluating them by what they do when they should. By all rational standards, give up, because as I've now witnessed firsthand, humans don't. The Council has finally recognized the human anomaly. Following my latest report, they've upgraded the human classification to emergent significant species and appointed a formal diplomatic delegation. Their reasoning: better to establish official relations now than allow humans to continue developing without supervision. I've been reassigned as cultural liaison due to my unique insights into human psychology. In truth, no one else wanted the job. The delegation arrived in Sol system 60 days ago aboard the Council vessel Harmony of Civilizations, an impressive ship, a floating embassy designed to project peaceful authority. The Vex-Kar observers watched from a distance, their treaty with humans holding but fragile. The initial diplomatic exchange seemed promising. The humans welcomed the Council representatives with elaborate ceremonies. Council delegates were given tours of Earth's major cities. Cultural artifacts were exchanged. The humans appeared appropriately deferential to the advanced civilization that was graciously accepting them into the galactic community. But I noticed something troubling. When Council representatives spoke of regulations, of quarantine protocols, of developmental guidelines, standard procedures for emerging species, the human delegates smiled politely and changed the subject. During a closed session with the human leadership, Council High Minister Trazielum finally stated directly, "Your species will be required to contain its expansion to the Sol system until proper developmental benchmarks have been achieved. This is non-negotiable." Thomas Marshall, now serving as Earth's chief diplomatic officer, responded with that same unsettling smile I'd seen during first contact. "With respect, Minister," he said, "humanity doesn't recognize the Council's authority to restrict our movement." The Council delegation was stunned. No emerging species had ever rejected Council guidance. It simply wasn't done. Perhaps, Marshall continued, you misunderstand our position. We're not seeking your permission to expand. We're hoping for your assistance. That evening, Marshall invited me to a private meeting. He knew I'd been observing humans longer than the others. He wanted to clear up some misconceptions. Your council sees us as children, he said, pouring a glass of amber liquid that my sensors identified as a mild intoxicant. They think they can set boundaries for us. That is standard protocol, I explained. All species are integrated gradually. We're already out there, Marshall interrupted, sliding a data tablet across the table. We launched 40 colonization vessels while the Vexcar were still licking their wounds, each carrying 10,000 humans. Destination: every habitable world within 100 light years. The data was accurate. Somehow, they'd constructed large-scale colony ships and deployed them without my detection. My observation protocols had failed catastrophically. This is in direct violation of galactic law, I said. Marshall's expression didn't change. Your laws, not ours. The council delegation departed Earth the next day, diplomatic relations formally established, but fundamentally damaged. Their parting message was clear: remain within your system or face consequences. 3 days later, the Vexcar broke their treaty. A fleet of 40 warships entered Sol system with a single objective: eliminate the human threat before it could spread further. But the humans were already gone. Earth appeared abandoned, its major cities vacant, its orbital facilities deserted. The Vexcar fleet scanned for hidden population centers, for underground bunkers, for any sign of the billions of humans who should have been there. Nothing. Then, simultaneously, across 17 Vexcar-controlled worlds, the impossible happened. Human forces emerged from hidden bases established months earlier. They seized critical infrastructure. They neutralized defensive systems. They didn't invade. They simply appeared, already in control of crucial facilities. The Vexcar fleet raced back to defend their territory, only to find their FTL navigation systems compromised. Half the fleet emerged in empty space, light years from any habitable world. The rest found themselves scattered across their own systems, unable to coordinate a response. I observed all this from my monitoring station on the Council homeworld, where emergency sessions were being convened hourly. The data feeds showed the unthinkable. A pre-FTL civilization had somehow executed a coordinated offensive against the most militarily powerful species in the sector, and was winning. The Council dispatched peacekeeping forces to contain the conflict. The humans ignored them entirely. Within 2 weeks, the Vexcar Imperium surrendered unconditionally. The post-conflict analysis revealed the full scope of the human strategy. After capturing the first Vexcar vessels, humans hadn't just extracted technology, they'd accessed the Imperium's secure networks. They'd identified every Vexcar world, mapped every defense system, and cataloged every vulnerability. While publicly negotiating with the Vexcar, they'd been secretly infiltrating their territory. Small teams of human operatives had been inserted into Vexcar systems using captured scout ships. These teams established hidden bases and recruited from subjugated species within the Imperium. By the time the Vexcar broke the treaty, the humans had spent months building a covert resistance network across Vexcar space. As for Earth's apparent abandonment, that was the most disturbing element of all. The humans had evacuated their entire planetary population in under 72 hours. Billions of individuals transported to hidden locations throughout their system and beyond. No species in recorded history has ever voluntarily abandoned their homeworld. The psychological attachment to the birth planet is considered a universal constant, yet humans did it without hesitation. The Council convened an emergency conclave to address the human problem. I was summoned to provide expert testimony. How did we miss this? The High Minister demanded. How did a primitive species defeat an established military power in a matter of weeks? We evaluated them by our standards, I explained. We assumed they would behave rationally. Explain. Vexcar military doctrine is based on force concentration, on overwhelming firepower, on visible displays of strength. It's rational, predictable, and effective against conventional opposition. I displayed the human counter-strategy on the conclave screens. Humans didn't attempt to match Vexcar's strength. They identified systems the Vexcar considered too insignificant to fully secure. They infiltrated through these gaps. They recruited allies from among the disaffected. They compromised critical networks, not with superior technology, but with psychological manipulation of Vexcar operators. The council representatives stared at the data in silence. No rational military commander would disperse forces so widely with no hope of reinforcement. No rational species would commit to a strategy with such narrow margins for success. No rational government would evacuate its homeworld on the mere possibility of attack. Yet they succeeded, the High Minister said quietly, because irrationality, employed systematically, becomes a form of rationality that conventional analysis cannot predict. That was 6 months ago. The situation has deteriorated significantly since then. The humans have expanded to 27 systems, including the former Vexcar territory. They've established diplomatic relations with 42 species, bypassing council protocols entirely. They've shared advanced technology with pre-FTL civilizations, violating our most fundamental non-interference principles. The Council's attempts at imposing sanctions have been ineffective. 3 minor military engagements have resulted in Council defeats, not because human technology is superior, it still isn't, but because human tactics continue to defy predictive models. Most disturbing is their latest innovation, the human cooperative. Unlike the hierarchical structures of the Council or the Vexcar Imperium, the cooperative is a loose alliance of species united by a single principle: absolute self-determination. Any member can leave at any time. Any decision requires full consensus. Resources are shared based on need rather than contribution. By conventional political theory, such a structure should collapse immediately from internal contradictions. Instead, it's growing exponentially. 17 species have abandoned Council jurisdiction to join the cooperative in the past month alone. The humans call it democracy applied to interstellar relations. The Council calls it chaos. I call it the end of the established order. The conclave has reconvened today to consider options for containing the human contagion. Military intervention has been ruled out after simulation models showed a 94% probability of defeat. Economic isolation is impossible given the humans' growing trade networks. Technological sabotage is ineffective against their decentralized development systems. The High Minister has proposed a desperate measure: direct mind-to-mind contact with human leadership to establish mutual understanding. The Council's most powerful telepathic specialists will attempt to create a shared cognitive framework with key human decision-makers. I've advised against this approach. My research indicates that human minds operate on fundamentally different principles than Council species. Their thought patterns are not merely alien. They're potentially hazardous to non-human cognitive structures. My warning has been dismissed as speculative. The telepathic contact is scheduled for tomorrow. The specialists have assured the Council that their mental disciplines will protect them from any psychological contamination. I've submitted my resignation from the Observation Corps, effective immediately. I will not remain to witness the next phase of this catastrophe. I've seen enough to know how it ends. The humans aren't merely expanding into the galaxy. They're remaking it in their image. A place where rational caution is considered weakness, where impossible risks are taken daily, where the established order of millennia can be discarded in favor of untested alternatives. The truly terrifying realization isn't that humans might destroy us in conflict. It's that they might remake us into versions of themselves. I was wrong. Or I left galactic space entirely, retreating to an observation outpost in the intergalactic void. I wanted distance, perspective, a place where I could catalog the dissolution of civilization without experiencing it directly. 3 days after my arrival, the message came. The telepathic contact had failed, catastrophically. Of the 12 specialists who attempted to link with human minds, 11 were permanently damaged. The 12th disappeared, defected to the human cooperative. The council declared a state of emergency. The High Minister resigned in disgrace. The provisional leadership enacted the final protocol, a full military mobilization not seen in 10,000 years. I watched the data feeds with growing despair as the council assembled its forces. Over 6,000 warships, 2 million ground troops, planet-killer weapons brought out of deep storage, all converging on human-controlled space. Rational analysis suggested the humans would sue for peace when confronted with such overwhelming force. Their remarkable adaptability had allowed them to defeat the Vex Car, but the Council military was orders of magnitude more powerful. No emergent species could hope to withstand such an assault, but humans, as I had learned, don't follow rational patterns. They made no attempt at diplomatic outreach. They issued no statements at all. As the Council armada crossed into their territory, they simply vanished again. Every human settlement, every outpost, every colony went silent simultaneously. Billions of humans and their allies disappeared without a trace. The Council forces found only empty worlds, abandoned cities, deserted space stations, no sign of struggle, no indication of mass evacuation. One moment, thriving civilizations, the next, nothing. For 3 weeks, the Armada searched human space, finding no resistance and no explanations. Council leaders began to believe the humans had somehow detected the coming attack and fled beyond the galaxy's edge. Then Earth reappeared on scanners. After months of absence, the human homeworld suddenly registered life signs again. Billions of them. Cities reactivated. Energy signatures flared across the planetary surface. It was an obvious trap. The Council fleet commanders knew this, and yet they had no choice but to investigate. Half the Armada diverted to Sol System, weapons primed for any deception. What they found was Thomas Marshall, alone, standing in an open field in a region humans called Colorado. No defenses, no military presence, just one man, waiting. The Council commander, Supreme Admiral Jolax, deployed an entire legion of troops to secure the area before reluctantly agreeing to a face-to-face meeting. I accessed the feed through my emergency clearance. "Where are your people?" Jolax demanded. Marshall smiled, that unsettling smile. "Everywhere. Your cryptic answers serve no purpose. We have deployed sufficient force to reduce this planet to ash. Surrender the human cooperative to Council authority." "You don't understand what's happening," Marshall said. "This isn't a negotiation. It's a demonstration." He extended a small device, a primitive handheld communicator. "I'm going to make a call now. Please observe carefully." Before Jolax could object, Marshall activated the device. What happened next defied comprehension. Across Council space, hundreds of light years from Earth, simultaneous explosions occurred on 63 critical military installations, not on the worlds themselves, but precisely targeted to destroy only command structures. On the Council homeworld, the Central Defense Network collapsed. On 49 Council member planets, power grids failed. Throughout the Armada, still searching human territory, navigation systems froze. None of these attacks killed a single individual. They were surgically precise, designed to disable rather than destroy. Marshall waited for the reports to reach Jolax, whose carapace had turned the pale blue of terror. "How?" the Admiral whispered. "We were never here," Marshall said, gesturing to the planet around them. "This is a projection, a convincing one, but just light and electromagnetic signatures. We evacuated Earth months ago. Where have you gone? Where are you hiding?" Marshall's expression changed then. The smile vanished, replaced by something colder. "We're inside your systems, all of them. We have been since the beginning." He walked in a small circle, hands clasped behind his back. "When we captured those first Vex-Car ships, we didn't just study their technology. We found a back door into the galactic communication network. Every species connected to it has been compromised for months, including the Council." "Impossible," Jolax said. "Our security is designed to detect technological intrusions," Marshall interrupted. "We didn't use technology. We used people, sleeper agents, members of Council species who were dissatisfied with their lives. We offered them purpose, connection, freedom." Marshall looked directly into the Admiral's compound eyes. "Your civilization is built on the assumption that rational beings will always choose security over uncertainty. We found those for whom that assumption doesn't hold." A holo display activated, showing thousands of points of light throughout Council space, each representing a human agent embedded in a critical system. "We could have destroyed you today," Marshall said. "Instead, we chose to demonstrate our capability. Now, let's discuss actual peace terms." The Council had no choice but to agree to negotiations. I was recalled from my self-imposed exile to serve as advisor, my previous warnings now giving me unwanted credibility. The peace conference convened on a neutral world, one of the few not infiltrated by human agents. Marshall represented the human cooperative. The new Council High Minister, a measured and ancient being named Yuri Ven, represented galactic civilization. "We seek reasonable accommodation," Yuri Ven began. "Territorial boundaries, non-interference protocols, standard diplomatic relations." Marshall shook his head. "Those terms assume a relationship between equals. That's not the reality." "You propose subjugation, then? The Council to submit to human authority?" "No. We propose something unprecedented." Marshall activated a holographic display showing a completely restructured galactic political system, the dismantling of centralized control, complete species self-determination, open technology sharing, unrestricted movement. The Council delegation reacted with horror. What Marshall described wasn't governance, it was anarchy. The collapse of 10,000 years of stable civilization. "This is madness," Yuri Ven said. "Without regulation, without developmental protocols, the galaxy would descend into chaos." Marshall's expression remained neutral. "From your perspective, perhaps. But consider your system has created stagnation, species bound by arbitrary development timelines, technological advancement controlled by a privileged few, cultural exchange limited by quarantine protocols. These measures ensure safety," I interjected. "They prevent destructive conflicts." Marshall turned to me. "At what cost? How many species have withered under your protection? How many potential futures have been strangled by your caution?" "We seek stability," Yurim said. "We seek growth," Marshall countered. "Even when it's painful, even when it's dangerous. That's the fundamental difference between us." The negotiations continued for weeks, but the gulf between perspectives proved unbridgeable. The Council could not accept a system without hierarchical control. The humans would not accept constraints on their expansion. In the end, they reached a compromise, or rather, a deferral of conflict. The human cooperative would maintain its independence. The Council would retain authority over its remaining territory. A demilitarized zone would separate them. But we all knew this was merely a pause in an inevitable transformation. I'm submitting my final report today before taking a position I never imagined: liaison to the human cooperative. The humans are planning something that has never been attempted in galactic history. They call it the Ascension Initiative. From the fragments I've gathered, it involves the voluntary merging of biological and digital consciousness across species boundaries. They believe they can create a meta-civilization, entities that exist simultaneously as individuals and as components of a greater whole. They speak of it not as transcendence beyond physical form, but as expansion into new dimensions of existence. The Council regards this as an abomination, a violation of the natural order, a threat to the very concept of distinct species identities. The humans see it as the inevitable next step in cosmic evolution. What terrifies the Council most isn't that humans might destroy us or even conquer us. It's that they might transform us into something beyond what we can currently comprehend. And I am beginning to wonder if they might be right. They weren't right. They were beyond right. They were prophets of a reality the rest of us were too afraid to imagine. I've spent 6 months embedded with the humans, studying the Ascension Initiative from within. What I've learned has fundamentally altered my understanding of existence itself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The transformation of galactic politics didn't begin with philosophical revelations. It began with blood. 3 months after the peace accord, a faction within the Council executed what they believed would be a preemptive strike against the human threat. This group, calling themselves the Preservers, acted without official sanction, but with the tacit support of many Council members. They deployed a quantum phase weapon against the human colonial world of New Terra. 5 million human settlers and their alien allies were erased from existence, not killed, but removed from the fabric of space-time itself. No bodies, no ruins, just a perfectly habitable planet, suddenly devoid of all intelligent life. The weapon was designed not just to eliminate the settlement, but to do so in a way that couldn't be traced back to the Council. The official position would be confusion and concern. Perhaps humans had triggered some unknown natural phenomenon through their reckless experimentation. I learned of the attack through my Council sources before the official announcement. I felt sick. Despite my complicated relationship with human expansion, I had never advocated for genocide. I transmitted the information to my human contacts immediately. The Council expected panic, retaliation against their borders, perhaps a limited military response that could justify full-scale war. What happened instead shattered all precedent. 48 hours after the attack, every Council member received the same message simultaneously. It appeared on personal communication devices, on public information networks, even on secure military channels. The message contained only coordinates and a timestamp. When Council representatives arrived at the specified location, a neutron star at the edge of Council space, they found a human cooperative vessel waiting. Thomas Marshall was aboard, looking older than when I'd last seen him, his expression grave. "You erased 5 million souls," he said, without preamble. "You used technology that violates your own laws of warfare. You thought we wouldn't know who was responsible." The Council representatives began to deny involvement, but Marshall raised his hand. "We're not here to debate culpability. We're here to demonstrate consequence." He activated a holographic display showing a small, unassuming device, a metal sphere, perhaps 10 centimeters in diameter. "This is a causality inversion generator," Marshall explained. "It creates a localized reversal of temporal flow. We've placed one at the core of every Council homeworld. The council delegation erupted in outrage and disbelief. Such technology was theoretical at best, impossible at worst. Marshall waited for silence before continuing. The devices are already active, but contained. If we release the containment field, the core of each affected planet will experience time flowing backward. Matter will unform. Energy will dissipate. The planet will, effectively, begin to uncreate itself from the inside out. He paused, letting the implications sink in. 5 million of our people were removed from existence. We could remove 5 billion of yours. The senior council delegate, trembling visibly, asked the obvious question, "What do you want?" Marshall's response shocked everyone present, including me. Justice. What followed was unprecedented in galactic history. The humans didn't demand territory, technology, or resources. They demanded the council identify every individual involved in the attack on New Terra and surrender them for trial under human justice systems. When the council hesitated, humans demonstrated their capability by activating one of the devices on an uninhabited moon. We all watched in horror as the celestial body collapsed in on itself, matter flowing impossibly backward toward non-existence. The council capitulated. Over 3,000 individuals, including 6 high ministers and dozens of military commanders, were handed over to human authorities. The galaxy waited for mass executions, for vengeance on a scale to match the original atrocity. Instead, the humans established what they called a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Each perpetrator was required to face the families of those lost, to explain their actions, to hear the consequences of their choices. No one was executed. No one was physically harmed. The punishments were, from a council perspective, far worse. The guilty were sentenced to restoration. They would spend the remainder of their natural lives helping to rebuild communities damaged by conflict, not as prisoners, but as participants in repair. Their identities were forever linked to their crimes. There was nowhere in the galaxy they could hide from what they had done. And through it all, the devices remained embedded in council worlds, a constant reminder of human capability and restraint. The political ramifications were immediate and irreversible. The council's authority collapsed. Member species, witnessing both the preserver's treachery and the humans' response, began withdrawing from council jurisdiction en masse. Within weeks, the 10,000-year-old galactic governing body had effectively ceased to exist, and in the vacuum, the human cooperative expanded, not through conquest, but through invitation. I found myself increasingly drawn to the human approach, not just their technology or their tactics, but their underlying philosophy, their willingness to reimagine fundamental assumptions about civilization. My official position as liaison gave me unique access to their leadership, including Marshall himself. During one of our discussions, I finally asked the question that had been troubling me since first contact. "You could have destroyed us at any point. Why didn't you?" Marshall considered the question carefully. "Because destruction is easy. Building something new is hard. But you had every justification for retribution. 5 million of your people were victims of fear," he interrupted. "The council feared us because they couldn't understand us. We could respond with fear in turn, or we could choose something else." "Mercy," I suggested. Marshall shook his head. "Evolution. We're offering the galaxy a chance to become something greater than the sum of its parts." He showed me the latest Ascension Initiative data. Volunteers from 17 species were participating in the early stages, a partial neural linking that allowed direct mind-to-mind communication while maintaining individual identity. The results were remarkable. Participants reported expanded consciousness, enhanced empathy, accelerated problem-solving capabilities. They weren't becoming less themselves. They were becoming more. "This is what the council feared most," Marshall said. Not that we would destroy them, but that we would render their entire approach to existence obsolete. Today, I did something that would have been unthinkable to me a year ago. I volunteered for the Ascension Initiative. All the procedure was nothing like I expected. There was no sense of invasion, no loss of self. Instead, I experienced an expansion, as if doors were opening to rooms in my mind I never knew existed. For the first time, I truly understood humans, not through observation or analysis, but through direct experience of their cognitive patterns, their instinct to move toward danger rather than away, their ability to hold contradictory possibilities in mind simultaneously, their capacity for both ruthless pragmatism and profound empathy. Most striking was their relationship with fear. Where my species experiences fear as a signal to retreat, humans experience it as a challenge to overcome. This isn't mere recklessness. It's a fundamentally different relationship with reality itself. I've transmitted my resignation to what remains of the Council Observation Corps. My final report contains a single recommendation: join the cooperative before it's too late. Not because humans will destroy those who resist, but because they are creating a future in which resistance becomes meaningless. The galaxy is transforming. Species that have existed in isolation for millennia are connecting in ways previously unimaginable. Ancient enemies are experiencing each other's perspectives directly. Problems that persisted for generations are being solved through collective cognition, all because one species refused to accept limitations that the rest of us mistook for universal constants. I used to believe humans were dangerous because they were unpredictable. I now understand they're transformative because they're unbound. The Council called human behavior insane because it defied rational analysis. What they failed to grasp was that humans weren't rejecting rationality. They were expanding it beyond conventional boundaries. In the end, humanity will not conquer the galaxy. They will awaken it.